on your bindings. And then if you've got you start kicking your feet together, and then you start violently spasming.
When the Senate found torture had produced no useful intelligence whatsoever, CIA counterterrorism boss Jose Rodriguez and his assistant panicked. They rushed to an industrial shredder, destroying 92 tapes of Zane and other victims being brutally, pointlessly tortured. This email between his CIA bosses explains the cover-up.
As Jose said, the heat from destroying is nothing compared to if the tapes got into public domain. They would make us look terrible.
But instead of prosecuting for destroying evidence, Obama promotes them. The woman who helped Rodriguez gut the tapes just got a major promotion to his former job, putting her in charge of drones and other secret death programs. The CIA's teamed up with Hollywood to portray that woman in her 50s as a young model whose torture finds bin Laden. This self-proclaimed true story lies to its viewers so despicably. In fact, torture did not help find him or anyone else, that senior senators have even launched an official complaint. Zero Dark 30 director Catherine Bigelow, who also won an Oscar for The Hurt Locker, where heroic Americans help stupid Iraqis, is dubbed the Leni Riefenstahl of our age. Riefenstahl directed Triumph of the Will, in which she glorifies German brutality. The film won many US awards.
Dear Catherine Bigelow, the propaganda amendment just signed into the law by the president legalizes direct funding of pro-government messaging in media without disclosure aimed at American citizens. The more pro-military your message, the more help you currently can get, from personnel to sets to technology, freeing up millions of dollars for the gigantic ad campaign that a film like this needs to win audience. In a time of darkness in America, you're being fated. But your career has taken the path of that other female apologist for evil, Leni Riefenstahl, who glamorized the National Socialist. Now you will be remembered forever as torture's handmaiden.
Dr. Jeff Kay, how do you make a nation blindly accept mass torture?
TV shows like 24 and others who would show that torture was in fact an acceptable form of behavior.
Tell me what you know about the Helix Protocol.
In Zero Dark 30, we don't have that. We have something, yet another, from my standpoint, even farther down the line of horror, in which torture is a way to move up the bureaucratic hierarchy. It becomes a question of others. There's we, and then there's the other. Only during World War II, and I know that Russia was victimized precisely by this kind of thought, where fascist thought took the idea that Slavs and Russians were something less than human. The Japanese did the same thing to the Russians and the Chinese and the Koreans. So, and the Americans, of course, have done this to numerous peoples around the world.
Yeah, does life in a torture state affect people unconsciously, though?
Guantanamo, for instance, there's a hunger strike going on. Men who feel desperate about their very lives, and yet the population as a whole goes about its daily business as if nothing is happening. And I don't hear that there's a dismay about it, but if you do open up, and I talk to a lot of people in my job, you find that people are aware that there's a subliminal or even more awareness to this, and underneath it, I think you have higher rates of depression, anxiety.
The Pentagon's now force-feeding Guantanamo hunger strikers simply because it calls prisoner deaths, quote, bad PR. But leading lawyer Marjorie Cohen, thanks so much for joining us. Why is force-feeding also classed as torture?
They have a tube that they stick in the nose and down into the stomach, incredibly painful, no sterilization between uses. And people call it, people say it's excruciating, no anesthesia, and it does amount to torture. Moreover, the American Medical Association, the World Medical Association, the declarations of Tokyo and Malta all say that doctors should not participate in force-feeding detainees if the detainees understand the consequences of refusing food.
We're even hearing doctors telling interrogators victims' physical and psychological weak spots to help them torture. George Bray-Mickham, you represent Zain Abu Zubaydah. Thanks for joining us. Is that happening?
Medical personnel were participating in the interrogation of prisoners and assisting in the torture of prisoners.
It's taken top investigator Jason Leopold years of research to get through Bush administration secrecy and reveal the facts of torture. Jason, thanks for coming on. How is Obama comparing to Bush?
It comes down to this, Daniel, is that this administration is not transparent, obviously trying to hide something. What we saw during the Bush years when George Bush and his administration lacked transparency, they were hiding crimes. We're still hearing stories about individuals certainly being turned over to countries and other governments that still engage in torture. We don't know what's taking place on these boats prior to being sent to the U.S. for charge or trial.
Propaganda war to repaint torture as something noble is on. Mix that with a secrecy even the Bush administration couldn't match, and the righteousness of Obama's election campaign sounds more and more like torturing the facts. This is the Truthseeker.